Please welcome Chair of the Associates, Andrew Stabard.
My kids would love to hear that. They wouldn't believe it. All right, so I'm going to just say a few words about our special guest and moderator joining us from New York City. It's award-winning journalist and host of Banfield on News Nation, Ashley Banfield. Just a little bit of background on Ashley. That's her on the screen. During her 30-year career, Ashley has served as host of the A&E primetime series Live Rescue. She's hosted Primetime Justice with Ashley Banfield on HLN. She's anchored Legal View with Ashley Banfield on CNN and co-anchored the CNN morning show Early Start. She's also served as a correspondent for ABC News, reporting for Good Morning America, 2020, ABC World News Tonight, and Nightline. As a correspondent for NBC News, Banfield reported for The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, and Dateline. During this time, she also anchored several primetime series on MSNBC, including A Region in Conflict and Ashley Banfield on Location. So I guess today we're doing the Associates on Location. We're so pleased to have Ashley here, and her agreeing to host this panel. Ashley was born and raised in Manitoba. Ashley regularly comes home to Manitoba, spending her summers at Lake of the Woods, and her connection to the Associates is that her mother is Susan Lount. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ashley Banfield, who is a professional at this. So Ashley, it's all yours.
That's so kind. Allegedly, I'm a professional at this, but thank you so much for that very kind introduction. So I just have to give a caveat to everyone right off the bat that Susie Lount is indeed my mom and is on the panel, and I will not be referring to her as Susie. I will be referring to her as Mom, because that's the way it works. I'm just delighted to kind of be in Winnipeg tonight. I'm so sorry I can't be there in person. I'm chained to a desk when I do a live nightly broadcast, so you're joining me in my studio in New York before I go live in a couple of hours for my program tonight on News Nation. But thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And without further ado, I just want to get right to it, as they say. And I'm going to start with my dear friend on the panel, Arnie Thorstenson, who I've known forever and ever, amen. Also my neighbor at Lake of the Woods. But Arnie, I want to ask you, as pertains to being a member in any kind of organization that is just getting its footing, as you were when the Associates, was born 40 years ago. As a founding member, why were you drawn to it, and what made you join something that didn't exist, and how on earth did you have the time?
Well, in 1982, I was a proud and grateful and empowered graduate of the Faculty of Commerce in 1970, and I was highly receptive to contributing to my alma mater. The dean, Roland Grandpré, many of you here tonight remember him and know him, was a charismatic and most inspiring leader. He really made a difference to the faculty. And he combined with one of the most dynamic business leaders in Winnipeg in the 1980s, Jack Fraser, who was the CEO of Federal Industries, a major public company headquartered in Winnipeg. So Roland had great plans for the faculty, including a new building exclusive to the Commerce faculty. So I was an easy sell for the $1,000 membership when I was approached by Jack and Dean Grandpré, and I also joined them in recruiting members. Now, again, many of you that remember and know Jack and Rolly, they were very capable and high-powered salesmen. And they went out, and within a year, we had recruited 100 members.
That is extraordinarily impressive within the first year, 100 members of any organization. So congratulations to you for that.
And $100,000 was a lot of money in 1982.
And today as well, for some. Okay, Mom, your turn. And I remember fondly as a young teenager in the house in Winnipeg, you referring to the associates. At that time, I didn't have much of a clue what it was. I certainly know now. But I also know a lot more as a working mother, how hard it is not only to run a business that you did, Banfield McFarland Evans, but also to run 4 children and then somehow figure out a way to have professional associations. So my question for you is, what was it like as a founding member in 1982, walking into a room as the only female member of the associates, the very first female member of the associates?
It was interesting. I do remember the first meeting that I went to, and so I went into my closet, as all girls will do, and I chose a black suit with a long skirt because the men were all in tuxedos, and I got a white blouse, and I put a little bow at the top of the white blouse, and off I went to my very first meeting. And I arrived at the door to the room where all the associates were meeting, and I stood outside the door for about 10 minutes and said to myself, they're just a bunch of cabbages. It's going to be okay. Just do it. And finally, I opened the door, and I was welcomed with just the most wonderful, warm welcome for the first woman to be in that exalted crowd. And I must tell you that all my years with the associates were just wonderful. And slowly but surely we did recruit women, but there were not a lot of women that were working in those days. You know, we were all supposed to be home with our children and making applesauce. Anyway, I gave up the applesauce and I joined the associates, and it's been a wonderful experience ever since.
I'm so glad that you did, because it provided a hell of an example for me, looking at all of the things that you were able to accomplish and how normal it was in our home that you were a leader in industry and a member of leaders in industry. So for me, it seemed natural just to, go head first into my business without any sort of, concern. So thank you for that. Paul Hill, I can't possibly begin to list off all of the things on your resume, but it's about 50 pages long. And much of it is professional memberships, associations, boards, institutions, foundations, clubs, programs, schools, universities, and all at the very highest level. So the reason I say that is because being a member of the associates for 40 years, it's easy to let some of these things drop off when your plate becomes very full, and yet you haven't. So tell me what it is about the associates that kept you so bonded to this group and how that's been beneficial to you for 4 decades.
Well, thanks for that. I joined originally as a young associate. I worked for Mr. Fraser, and so it wasn't optional. And so I had the opportunity as one of the first to join the Young Associates organization, and then I'll never forget when I turned 40, I got a phone call from Arnie, and he said, "Are you 40? I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're now an associate." And so to me, what that meant is my fee went from $250 to $1,000, Arnie. You know what's really cool, actually, the way you describe the organization and those of us that are inside it, it's an ecosystem, because most of us started as students. We get through into the Young Associates program, and then we get access and exposure to all these activities and events and people that we'd never be able to talk to or interact with. And then through my working career, becoming an associate, and now the opportunity to kind of give back and be involved in those things. And so, never would have an opportunity to sit into a board meeting and watch the way Arnie choreographs and manages the meeting, or lots of other people in this room, and made some fantastic friends. The other reality is this ecosystem or network really serves itself well, because through things like COVID and these other issues, there's a roster of people I could call to say, have you seen this? Have you experienced that? And so forth. as opposed to knowing where to go, we've got this really cool community that doesn't judge, that's willing to share and so forth. And the school is very special to all of us. And so not only giving back through our time, but through the fundraising over the years has been a very cool journey and experience to be part of. And I'm one of the lucky ones that went from a student to the young associate, and now to not an old associate, but an older associate.
So your resume is long, but Paul Hill's is even longer, as it should be. He's got a few years on you and me. And Paul, same question to you with a different context. You're coming to us tonight from Calgary. I know you're normally in Regina, if not on the road all over the world. And the all over the world part is germane to my question, because it becomes even more difficult as your horizons expand internationally to continue coming back to an organization that you've been a member for so long. What keeps you so tied to the associates? And tell me about the benefits that you still, even this many years later, continue to benefit from.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that both yourself and your mom look younger every year. That's one of the things that keeps bringing me back to the Lake of the Woods. And the second thing I want to say is, in my studio here, I have the mother of our 5 children and 12 grandchildren, as well as an accomplished writer, as you well know. And of course, she's participating and listening and being part of all of it as well. But you know, our family has always been dedicated to education. And as you know, our oldest daughter, Roseanne, who is now the president and CEO of Harbour Developments, is a graduate of the Asper School of Business. And a great deal of her development, of course, took place as a result of going to the graduate program there. And so we've always had a network of friends in Winnipeg. We have a couple of businesses in Manitoba, and we see many of you throughout the year, but mostly during the summer. So what brings us back? All the great people and the great opportunities that Manitoba and the university offer, and our great friendship with all of you.
And that's what brings me back as well. And I'm not even a member of the associates, nor am I in a business community. I'm the black sheep of my family in journalism. Everybody else is in finance or business. So I'm glad to hear that, Paul. And I'm thrilled that you keep coming back to the Lake of the Woods also. Susan Goldie, I'd like to ask you a little bit, as a current member of the associates, looking back on the last almost 3 years since COVID hit, and how many, left, right, and backward turns we've made. How do you think business relationships have changed, or have they? And has sort of the advent of a new digital way of communicating really set as professional association and how we combine, how we connect to it on its ear? Have you noticed a big change or a big difference in how we all connect?
Say that I miss the in-person and the level of in-person that used to be, but I think we're starting to get back to that. One of the things that I think has been a huge silver lining, though, of this whole experience as we've lived through COVID is the incredible adoption of the technologies that really allow us to engage remotely. So it's just expanded the world that we can all participate in. And I would say that it doesn't take away the incredible need and value of building relationships in a face-to-face environment, but it does allow you to, it's proven that we can extend our boundaries and maintain relationships through other ways as well. So I think it's broadened the opportunity for more people to do business in an expanded way.
And certainly a unique way. Welcome to my world. I have always had to do on-camera, face-to-face. So this whole Zoom environment is just right up my alley. And now everybody's just learning what I've, had to figure out for all these years. Plus, my communication is often one way. I can't see the people who are usually, getting my message. So it's a benefit to have Zoom where you can. Connor Egan. For such a young guy, you sure do have a lot of accomplishments under your belt already. I can't, like the others, I can't begin to list off everything you've done, but you're well on your way, kiddo. So talk to me a little bit about being a young associate and what you're expecting to get out of this organization in the decades that you have ahead of you.
Well, I'm just very fortunate that last year I served as CSA president, that I was able to have a seat at the table with the young associates and associates and serve on their boards and committees. Oh, thank you. And really, like, so much of what I experienced throughout my degree at Asper was impacted by not what I was doing necessarily in the classroom. It was the people that I was meeting through organizations like this. It was the experiential learning opportunities, and something that's been mentioned a couple times tonight with the Student Managed Investment Fund. Initiatives like that are really what make the experience very meaningful for a student and allow them to make the most out of their degree, and the associates were able to make that happen for me. And so many people in this room were mentors to me, and really, like, what I look forward to about and encourages me to be a part of the young associates and in the decades to come, the associates, is just to be able to kind of give that back and pay that forward to future students and stay connected to the school that I was a part of. And I'm just fortunate that we have an organization like this.
This is a dumb question, Connor, but when I was your age, business cards were it. Everybody had to have a pocket full of business cards to network. But you guys, it might be different. What do you do that's the equivalent of the business card when you meet people?
I actually do still carry business cards, so it's not out of style yet.
I'm glad to hear I'm not too out of the game. Stephanie, again, another really remarkable resume for such a young person. I'm very jealous. I want to ask you, is it fair to call you millennial, Stephanie?
I just read a book, and apparently I'm actually a Gen Z, but I'll take either.
Same thing. I'm kidding. There's a big difference between Gen Z and millennials, but you're definitely a younger generation, and I'm curious about the way you feel networking and professional organizations fit into your business life. Do you see it as the same way my mom did, as the same way Arnie and Paul did, or Paul Soubry sees it? Or do you see things really shifting in terms of the model of the organization you're in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's more valuable today than ever. For me personally, I think, and Connor sort of spoke to this or alluded to this, was the networking really is key, and that's something that when we were students at Asper was really drilled into us. And I think what we both probably could attest to is the fact that being in Asper, you had so many doors open to you. You were able to walk into a room and connect with people who are, years ahead of you in terms of their degree, who can offer up mentorship. And I will say that networking has proven to be just as valuable as everyone says it is. The current role that I have, for example, at KPMG at the moment, I got that job through networking. There's been other opportunities and, mentors that I now have and I'm lucky to have that I've also gotten through networking. So I think to your question, I'm not sure whether it's really changed from the past. I think the value of it has definitely been emphasized through extracurriculars and all of the various opportunities that are offered to students, which maybe didn't exist back then, or at least not to the extent that they are now. But I think really the value of it is drilled into us from the day that we begin at Asper and really until the day that we leave. So yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and I'm going to dovetail. Same kind of question, different context for Arnie. Again, Arnie, as a founding, member of the associates, there's such a difference now. If you use the M word, like millennials, oftentimes it's slightly derogatory just in terms of work ethic or work value or hours that you dedicate or mental health, and it's a really new model, the way people look at professionalism, work hours, and dedication to the craft. I'm curious how you look at the younger generation as they sort of shift and mold their viewpoints and their outlook on what it means to be a professional and what it means to be dedicated and what it means to dig in and work hard. Do you see a big change for the better, for the worse, none of the above?
Oh, I think a change for the better, Ash. The graduates of the Asper School today, I think, are more talented, better educated, and more ambitious than graduates of the past. There's no question that there's outstanding young people attending and graduating from Asper today. The vast majority start off their careers in Manitoba and are a very important contributor to the future success of Manitoba.
So, it's interesting you say that. I read Walter Cronkite's book, and I remember a passage in there that just sort of shook me to my core. He said, today's reporters, and this is, about 20 years ago, but he said, today's reporters and anchors are infinitely better than I was because the requirements are tenfold. They're filing digital reports and radio reports, and they're doing multiple live shots a day where I just did the news in the evening once. And I found that to be telling, just in terms of when your plate gets more full, you tend to perform to the task. You rise to the level of what's required of you. But Mom, I do want to take you back 40 years and ask you, nothing personal, but what would have life been like for you with those 4 kids at home? And I'm just going to say, Mom didn't make applesauce, but she made dinner every night. She came home and put dinner on the table every single night. She knew every report card. She met with my teachers. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you did it, but kudos. But what if you'd had a smartphone in your hand at all times? And what if partners and clients and everybody had access to you at all hours of every day, weekends, holidays, nights, etc., plus your laptop had to be in the car with you wherever you went? Do you think things would have been different?
Yes, I do. I remember, I would get up in the morning and I would see you all off to school, and I would speed around and get things sort of organized, and I would get to the office later than 8 or 8:30 as everybody does now. But when I got to the office, I had a clean bill of sort of day. And I could devote my entire energies to the day. I also had 4 little people at home, one of you being you, that I left notes for and said, please put the spaghetti on at 3:45 or 4 o'clock, and the roast will be, blah, blah, blah. And so, we managed in those days. We weren't interrupted in our day with cell phones. Of course, I was at my desk and I had my phone going all the time. So the actual business day wasn't that different. But we did have to organize our lives, and I must admit, I organized my children to help me to run my whole operation. And you guys were great.
I will always credit you with how good I am at making salad, because that was what I had to do every night. And they didn't come in salad in a bag either. We had to chop everything, and I'm really good at salad, FYI. So Paul Soubry, Arnie referenced a little bit about the Asper School graduating remarkable candidates better and better every year. Then there's always the concern about those spectacular minds leaving. I mean, I hate to say I left. I left Winnipeg. I had to. My career requires me to travel. But I always worry about brain drain, and I always worry about Winnipeg and Manitoba in particular. What do you think the Associates is doing in conjunction with the Asper School to harness this remarkable talent and make sure they don't leave us?
Well, that's a real issue. I have 2 children that went away to school, and one's back, and we're working on the second one. But the reality is, as I said before, this whole ecosystem in terms of us allowing not only the access to young people, whether young associates or going to the U of M Asper functions to be able to interact, but having those people understand how important it is that they do have those access. Because my children that were in other provinces or states, they don't know where to go. They don't have this system to be able to network with people and access and so forth. And I think we heard the committee reports before you joined us, Ashley, about what's going on in terms of activities, what's going on in the Young Associates. This whole providing the avenue and the venue to make people understand from here you can do pretty special things. And as you know, Manitoba has some tremendously successful world-class businesses that haven't had to go elsewhere. And so I think the biggest selling point for associates and young associates is opening up those young people's eyes that you can do it from here, and all the benefits of being part of this wonderful community right here from Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Yeah, my mom said that, she co-opted her kids to keep the organization going, right, to support her professional life. And Paul Hill, your daughter Roseanne, dear friend of mine, and just a spitfire, remarkable, remarkable woman, you have the benefit of learning new tricks from her in her generation as she runs so much of your professional organization. I want to ask you a little bit about that, because I think there's a lot of people in the room who also have family who they would like to be a part of their organization, and it doesn't operate so differently from the associates. You're networking within the family, but you're certainly learning from each other. And to that end, you can dovetail that to who learns more, Roseanne or you?
Well, as you know, as most people are that you're talking to here, are dedicated to lifelong learning. So that never stops. And whether it's coming from your children or coming from other sources, it is a lifelong process. And I'm very dedicated to that. And I know Roseanne is too. And I know that she also learns quite a bit from other people, including her father and her mother and her friends and people like yourself, Ashley, and people that have accomplished things in their lives. And she takes those things from her brothers and sisters. Shannon, your close friend, who, as you know, is not only a Georgetown graduate, but a lawyer and a doctor. And she's into lifelong learning. So I think both of us nurture each other as we can. We're both different individuals, and we both move in different directions sometimes. But that's the nature of the human resource that you have within yourself and within others. And of course, I know that Roseanne believes the same thing, and that is that I try to hire people that are better than I am, particularly in the areas where I am weak. And so that's something that's a lifelong habit. And so, in terms of hiring a younger generation or working with the younger generation, they bring talents and energy that is, not the same as mine, and in many areas not as good as mine.
And thank you. And you know what, I do continue to learn not only from Roseanne, but from Shannon and from Carol. If she's behind, at some point, she better get in that view and wave to this group, because
there she
is. Thank you. Hi, Carol.
Oh,
Close by.
Ashley, hi, Susie and Arnie.
It's good to
it's
see
lovely
you.
to see
And I will say better half, Paul, because you can be a little prickly at times. And so Carol has always been the one to soften that up. And I will speak from experience. I have spent many a day and night in your home and in your cottage. It's good.
That's true.
Okay, so Susan Goldie, I do want to ask you a little bit about Gen Z and millennials, because they're not only our colleagues now, but they're also our market. And so when networking, I'd love to find out from you, just sort of pick your brain as to how you glean and mine the most information from your colleagues so that you can actually target your market in a better way.
So the majority of people that I work with now are much younger than I am, so it's a well-targeted question to me. And I think you just need to, it is a two-way street of learning. And I'm every day inspired by some of their attitudes around where the world is going, what they're looking for, what's meaningful to them. Some of the world perspective is different in this new generation. And I think so they're bringing some really important challenges to the forefront. And so I think our objective is to really listen and hear, because as you say, they are what is next, right? And the world is going to go in the direction that they choose to take it. And I love the passion that they bring to it. So it's interesting. We did a bit of a survey on engagement at our organization at one point, and the key things that came up were things like, please stop buying those coffee pods because they're not recyclable. So it was, and then there was something else around mental health benefits and making sure those were accessible. So I see incredible drive and lots of passion and lots of hard work, but it's really interesting because it's also balanced with a couple of principles that is really good for us all to be paying attention to. And honestly, that's one of the things that I have found incredibly valuable about the Associates program, is that back and forth, right? As a student, I remember being so inspired by the opportunity to engage with the Associates, and I benefited so greatly from the direct impact that they had. I was one of the first students to be in the Drake building, for example, so very direct impact. But as an associate, the opportunity to engage with students and to be back at the school and see what's driving the energy at the school now, it really informs what we need to know professionally to grow our businesses.
Well, I'll tell you what, learned one of the biggest lessons from a millennial on my staff, and that was that I had asked her to carry out a single task and she couldn't do it. It was just to pick up the phone and call someone. And, I made a terrible judgment that she might be lazy. And the truth was, she was terrified. It's a very, very different environment among millennials to do face-to-face human contact, because much of what they've come to learn has been via thumbs. And so it was a really eye-opening experience for me, and I could tailor a lot of the work so that I got the most out of this candidate, and it was great. So I only have a couple seconds left, but I'll tell you what, Connor and Stephanie, in that order. I'm gonna start with you, Connor. I would really love to get just, 30 seconds to a minute on what you see as I'm gonna guess 20 or 21-year-old, Connor?
22.
22, okay, close enough. What do you see as you look out ahead as to the next sort of big trend? And you can pick anything, whether it's a social trend, whether it's a business trend, whether it's a human resources trend. What do you sort of see ahead that you would like other people to know about?
Well, the first thing that came to mind, something that's already been brought up, and that's mental health and the focus on that more within organizations and just generally within society. Obviously, the trend towards digital media and how organizations promote and reach target audiences and all of that. But these are all things that I think more people, young and old, are starting to notice and recognize, and I think it's kind of, you have to, as an organization, to look at these things and realize that the narrative is kind of shifting towards these things.
And that there's value in that. Excellent, thank you for that. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Stephanie, what are your thoughts about the horizons? What would you like people my age and older, et cetera, to know about and benefit from?
Well, I think speaking from my experience personally as someone who's just graduated, starting to enter the workforce, I think something that's becoming really important, that's gaining momentum, is the idea that the organizations that we now work for and that we choose to spend the majority of our time in, mean a lot more to us, in the sense that it's not just a place where you go 9 to 5. It's not just your coworkers. These are really the people that you spend the most of your time with, and so people like myself are starting to look at organizations differently. It's not just about the job you do, but how does my organization feel about taking time away from work sometimes to volunteer and give back to my community, because that's important to me? Or how does my organization feel about empowering me with things that I do, outside of the job, that then translate to the things that I do when I'm in the office? And I think as we go along, we see more and more of that becoming important. And in order for organizations to keep up, they're going to have to adapt and show that it's important to them as well if they want to retain, the up-and-coming generation of leaders.
That's excellent. And I will just add to that, more Captain Crunch and Cheetos in the break room, please. I think that's brilliant.
That too.
Thank you to all of you. My time has run out, plus I have a deadline for a live show that I have to prepare. My thanks to Arnie Thorstensen, Paul Hill, Paul Subry, Susan Goldie, Connor Egan, Stephanie Kalo, and of course, my phenomenal mom, Susie Lown. Thank you all for letting me be a part of all of this. Congratulations on 40 years of the Associates. And I hope maybe at some point I can be in the room with you for one of these wonderful celebrations. I'm going to toss it back over to you, Andrew.